There are two ways of looking at the world, through faith and superstition, or through the rigors of logic, observation and evidence, through reason. Yet today, reason has a battle on its hands. I want to confront the epidemic of irrational, superstitious thinking. It's a multi-million-pound industry that impoverishes our culture.
Astrology leans toward the divine and the sacred, words which I know you don't like very much.
And throws up New Age gurus who exhort us to run away from reality. As a scientist, I don't think our indulgence of irrational superstition is harmless. I believe it profoundly undermines civilization. Reason and a respect for evidence are the source of our progress, our safeguard against fundamentalists and those who profit from obscuring the truth. We live in dangerous times when superstition is gaining ground and rational science is under attack. In this program, I want to take on the enemies of reason. "300 years ago, in the Age of Enlightenment, scientists and philosophers from Galileo to David Hume had the courage to stand up for intellectual principles and reason. The rational science they pioneered has given us tangible benefits. Everything from antibiotics to electricity, sewage systems to sat-nav. And it's not just material progress. Increased life expectancy, health and leisure provided by modern medicine and industrial technology have given more people more time than ever before to educate themselves, express their creativity, and ponder existence. And yet, into this better world that reason has built, primitive darkness is coming back, a disturbing pick and mix of superstitions. Where better to start my journey than a New Age fair? Hello, what do you do? What sort of readings do you do?
All kinds. I do the tarot, and then I also do the crystal ball. This is George.
Hello. What can you do for me?
All right, well, we can take out our photograph.
All right, I'd like that, yes. What do I do? Just sit on the throne there?
Take a seat, please.
Shall I take my glasses off? What have we got here?
Right, now, you have got a couple of spirit guides around you at the moment, because I think there's something in your life changing, but I think this is about you as well, being more comfortable with yourself. Now, what you have here is you have somebody in spirit who's really, really close to you, and they've got their arms around your neck.
Well, that's very nice to know. All these people reap the rewards of science and reason, but many here revel in a foggy suspicion of scientific thinking. Okay, so you could teach me how to use my psychic energy?
Yes.
Is that the idea?
Yes. You can rely much better on that than on your head.
Irrationality is woven into the fabric of modern life. We unthinkingly indulge unscientific delusion.
I'm the rather schizophrenic Gemini.
Aquarius.
Pisces.
Astrology is so pervasive that just about everyone has been indoctrinated with the alleged character of their star sign.
They're fiery, a bit unreliable, they love traveling, they're very expansive, they're quite spiritual.
Loyal, spend too much money, good leader.
They can be a bit moody, swinging one way and the other. They can be very bubbly 1 minute and then a bit down, and you never know what you're going to get with them, my husband says.
A full quarter of the British population claim to believe in astrology. That's more than believe in any one of the gods touted by religions. Day in, day out, astrological horoscopes get far more newspaper column inches than science. Amusingly, it falls foul of our modern taboo against lazy stereotyping. How would we react if a newspaper published a daily column that read something like this? Germans, It is in your nature to be hard-working and methodical, which should serve you well at work today. In your personal relationships, especially this evening, you will need to curb your natural tendency to obey orders. Chinese, inscrutability has many advantages, but it may be your undoing today. British, your stiff upper lip may serve you well in business dealings, but try to relax and let yourself go in your social life. And so on through 12 national stereotypes. Of course, the astrology columns are not as offensive as that, but we should ask ourselves exactly where the difference lies. Both are guilty of facile discrimination, dividing humanity up into exclusive groups based on no evidence. So now I want to find out how those who trade in such irrational nonsense can possibly justify what they do.
This is a map of the cosmos with London in the very centre.
I always thought that by the 21st century, science and reason would have long since cleaned up. And yet every day of the week, we're encouraged to retreat into the fog of the superstitious past. Astrology is a primitive belief system made into elaborate pseudoscience. It arrogantly makes humans the focal point of the universe. The movement of planets is supposed to signify petty developments in our career or love life. It was developed in the 2nd century AD by the philosopher Claudius Ptolemy and has not moved on since, despite the discovery of new planets and despite a shift in the Earth's rotational axis that has thrown Ptolemy's zodiac out by 23 degrees.
You could ask a question. You could say, who has stolen my money?
It never made sense when it was first invented, and it makes even less sense now. Reel it off as though you mean they get it right. Do you think there's an actual physical influence of the planets that somehow beams down and influences us, people?
I think it's very hard to see that. I think if you try to understand astrology as a causal agent,
right,
I think that's hard to imagine how that would happen. I think you have to look at the planets as signifiers. When you look at the movement of Saturn around the zodiac, it's a very strong signifier of what's going on in individual lives.
I don't even understand how they could possibly be signifiers. I mean, how could the rise of Saturn possibly be a signifier for something that's going on physiologically in a person's body? The position of planets in the signs of the zodiac.
This is what you keep coming back to ask me. How could it possibly work?
Yes.
And I've told you, I don't know. It's a deep, dark mystery.
What isn't a deep, dark mystery is why the trite vagaries of newspaper horoscopes seem to chime with readers. Psychologists have identified what's known as the Barnum effect, whereby people tend to believe statements are accurate for them personally, when in fact they're general enough to apply to anyone. When in fact they're general enough to apply to anyone. We could devise a little experiment where we take your forecasts and then give some of them straight, give some of them randomized, sometimes give Virgo, the Pisces forecast, etc., and then ask people how accurate they were.
Yes, that would be a perverse thing to do, wouldn't it?
It would be, yes, but I mean, wouldn't that be a good test?
A test of what?
Well, how accurate you are.
I think that your intention there is mischief, and I think what you'd then get back was mischief.
Okay, well, my intention would not be mischief. My intention would be experimental test.
Okay.
Scientific test.
Well,
but even if it was mischief, how could that possibly influence it?
I think it does influence it. I think whenever you do things with astrology, intentions are strong.
I'd have thought you'd be eager. I mean, I'd have thought you'd really... See, the fact that you're not makes me think you don't really, in your heart of hearts, believe it. I don't think you really are prepared to put your reputation on the line.
I just don't believe in the experiment, Richard. It's that simple.
Well, you're in a kind of no-lose situation then, aren't you?
I hope so.
Yeah. Regardless of Neil Spencer's concerns, I wanted to conduct a simple trial. We selected 20 people at random. We asked them to read that week's horoscope for Capricorn, but as a test, we said it applied to their own star sign.
Not only Do you have clever Mercury and ambitious Mars focusing on success?
But now the Sun is at the same pivotal midhaven angle of your solar chart.
I have no idea what that means.
Put simply, this means that this is your moment to go that extra mile to become the person you dream of becoming.
Remember, however, that there will be others who want what you have and will stop at nothing to get it.
Astrologers say this should fit just Capricorn and not the rest. But what actually happened?
Yeah, maybe.
To be honest, I felt there's some Mercury energy this week because there's a lot of arguments around and a lot of bad vibes. Yeah, that kind of makes sense.
What a load of old junk.
It could apply to me as much as to the next person.
Yeah, well, in a way, yeah. I am. I'm going on a flamenco course in Spain.
That isn't necessarily pertaining to me this week. It's pertaining to me generally.
Pile of rubbish.
The same number of people agreed that the horoscope was accurate for them as disagreed, and similar results are found with proper large-scale experiments. Technically, all but one of our group should have disagreed, namely our only Capricorn.
Does it apply to you?
Not at this moment, no.
Am I taking this too seriously? I believe astrology misleads the public, denies scientific progress, and belittles our universe. There's a far richer way of looking at the cosmos. Astronomy is a triumph of the human intellect, a real science, constantly enriched by new evidence. Forget about the astrologers' charts with their constellations and planets moving in and out of this house or that house. Go into a real observatory and look at the Milky Way. Or go out into the country on a moonless night. Just lie on your back and gaze up at the stars. The heart-stopping sight you'd see is 100 billion stars spinning through an expanding universe at a speed of 1 million miles per day. The light from some of the closer stars started its journey at the time of the dinosaurs. You're staring into a deep time machine. I want to show how scientific reason is always the best way to look at the world and explain the dangers of superstition. Rather than adapt to evidence, many of us, it seems, remain trapped in ways of thinking inherited from our primitive ancestors. The sea has often been thought to be a malevolent force actively out to get you. In 480 BC, King Xerxes of the Persians built a pontoon bridge across the Hellespont, and a rough sea came and wrecked it. And King Xerxes was so furious that he sentenced the sea to 300 lashes. I wonder whether there's something of King Xerxes in all of us to this day. We don't want to believe that things just happen. We want to believe that there's some kind of deliberate intention behind everything, even where inanimate objects are concerned. And perhaps that is the key to humanity's belief in the supernatural. Even in the 21st century, despite all that science has revealed about the indifferent vastness of the universe, the human mind remains a wanton storyteller, creating intention in the randomness of reality. The delivery of rewards by a one-armed bandit is determined at random. But many gamblers want to think that what they do can increase their chances of winning the jackpot. They stand on one leg or wear a lucky shirt. Are these superstitious behaviors a byproduct of our evolution? all wild animals have to be kind of natural statisticians, looking for patterns in the apparent randomness of nature when they're looking for food or trying to avoid predators. There are two kinds of mistakes they can make. They can either fail to detect pattern when there is some, or they can seem to detect pattern when there isn't any, and that's superstition. "60 years ago, the American psychologist B.F. Skinner investigated the behavior of pigeons, rewarding them with food when they learnt to peck a key in the feeding apparatus. But then Skinner set the apparatus to reward the birds at random. Now the pigeons just had to sit back and wait. But that isn't what they did. Instead, the majority developed what Skinner called superstitious behavior. When an individual pigeon, for example, happened to look over its left shoulder, and the reward mechanism just happened to click in at that point, it would have got the idea that it was looking over the left shoulder that had got it the reward, so it tried it again. By sheer luck, as it happened, the reward mechanism delivered food at the same time again. And so the pigeon was reinforced in its idea that looking over the left shoulder was what got it the reward. And it went on and turned into a maniac for looking over the left shoulder. Humans can be no better than pigeons. We constantly create false positives. We touch wood for luck, see faces in toasted cheese, fortunes in tea leaves. These provide a comforting illusion of meaning. This is the human condition. We desperately want to feel there's an organizing force at work in our bewilderingly complex world. And in the irrational mindset, if you believe in the mystical pattern you've imposed on reality, you call yourself spiritual. Spirituality is a prized commodity. The media tell us to respect spiritual souls and their apparently deep insights. Spiritual self-help guides do a roaring trade in the material world, outnumbering science books by 3 to 1.
So please take your seat and please come slowly and gently so that we can start the proceeding without losing time. So could you please...
Satish Kumar is the editor of Resurgence, an ecological magazine at the sandal-wearing end of the Green Movement, and he counts amongst his many fans Prince Charles and the Dalai Lama. But isn't Satish's spirituality just about imposing yet another superstitious false positive? It all sounds very poetic, but it's not reality. Like priests, mullahs and rabbis, New Age mystics ceaselessly attempt to fill gaps in human understanding with fabricated meaning. Science and rationality are often accused of having a cold, bleak outlook. But why is it bleak to face up to the evidence of what we know? The word mundane has come to mean boring and dull. And it really shouldn't. It should mean the opposite, because it comes from the Latin mundus, meaning the world, and the world is anything but dull. The world is wonderful. There's real poetry in the real world. Science is the poetry of reality. And yet today, science is under attack. Next, I want to look at the dangers that poses.
Why do I have to trust, the GP? Why do I have to trust the Royal Society?
I think you're so close to being right, but yet you're damn wrong. In the last 50 years, science has put a man on the moon, cloned a sheep, decoded the human genome. And yet, sadly, the white heat of the 1960s seems to be treated as a white elephant today.
What colour do you see, guys?
In the thing it looks multicolored.
Okay, it's blue, yellow and...
That's it.
A prejudice against science is evident in schools. Physics A-levels have halved in the last 25 years, chemistry fallen by more than a third. University departments are closing all around the country.
And last but not least...
This is a betrayal of the Enlightenment. The fundamental problem, I think, lies with the fashion throughout our educational system to teach students to value private feeling more highly than evidence-based reason. This is rooted in the postmodern relativist agenda. For relativists, scientific truth is just a patriarchal Western orthodoxy that, like the old Roman Catholic Church, stands in the way of other equally valid outlooks on the world.
With things like the paranormal, the drive for alternative medicine, all these kinds of movements away from the orthodoxy in science, I see it a lot as like the Protestant Reformation was vis-a-vis Roman Catholicism. Internet, in a way, is kind of functioning as a kind of information source, very much like the printing press did in the 15th century and 16th century, that is in a sense empowering people to sort of look up stuff for themselves in terms of different kinds of treatments and things like that, and in a way not trusting the experts anymore. Well, look, why do I have to trust, the GP? Why do I have to trust the Royal Society?
I think you're so close to being right, but yet you're down wrong. You're absolutely wrong. I would like to take that ball and run with it in a different direction. Yes, we want to question authority. We don't want to say, because this person is the president of the Royal Society, therefore what he says is right. We've got to go back to the evidence and find out what is actually true.
The problem is, of course, people may look at the same evidence and then reach a somewhat different conclusion from what the head of the Royal Society reached. And so they will say, well, look, I looked at the evidence too, and I'm not persuaded by this. That's where you start getting a kind of an opening up of science.
Steve Fuller is of course right that the internet is revolutionizing how we use and consume information. But the impersonal algorithms of internet search engines do not weed out robust evidence from unsourced, uncorroborated assertion. Wikipedia World presents both great opportunity and huge danger. This is the world of private hunches and no respect for evidence. Reason has built the modern world. It is a precious but also a fragile thing, which can be corroded by apparently harmless irrationality. We must favor verifiable evidence over private feeling. Otherwise, we leave ourselves vulnerable to those who would obscure the truth.